The Sun and Shona Craven, columnist at The National. Shona, Ryan, morning to you both.
Morning.
Lovely to have you both in here with us. All right, let's crack on, because there's a range of stories, actually, in the papers on the front pages, aren't there, today? So let's start with this, front of The Guardian. This broke, I think, when we just got off air yesterday, that Palestine Action ruled unlawful. Take us through the reporting here and where this goes next, Shona.
Yeah, so this is big news. Palestine Action ban has been ruled unlawful in a blow to ministers, is The Guardian's headline. So the ban has not been quashed yet. Both sides have the chance to make further representations. But as it stands, a lot of people are now in a legal limbo because it's been declared that this was disproportionate and lawful, this proscription of Palestine Action. And of course, what this doesn't mean is that people are allowed to break other laws that already exist and that already prohibit certain actions, but it's this framing of those actions as terrorism, and indeed framing of other actions, such as, you know, holding placards or wearing T-shirts, which we've obviously heard a lot about because a lot of people have been arrested on the spot for that. And so what this means at the moment in this limbo is that the Met Police have said they will stop arresting people immediately for showing support for Palestine Action, but they will continue to gather evidence for potential future prosecution because this is still in that limbo situation. But obviously, in terms of how this is being received by politicians, Zach Polanski of the Green Party says it's time for the government to stop criminalising the people protesting a genocide, whereas the Shadow Home Secretary says supports the decision for the government to appeal because there can be no hesitation when public safety and national security are at stake. But one might say, well, you could say that about prescribing almost anything, that, you know, you could be better safe than sorry, but this is the argument about proportionality.
How damaging do you think this ruling is for the government, Ryan? I mean, this came in under Yvette Cooper, didn't it? But the new Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, has indicated, certainly on social media, that they will push ahead with an appeal. But is this damaging to have headlines like this?
I think it is, but I think on one hand, I think Shabana Mahmood has got no choice really but to appeal. She has to look tough, and also she is one of the sort of tough-looking and cabinet ministers out there. Campaigners were out yesterday calling for Yvette Cooper that she should actually resign from government over the decision. But I think one of the things it raises is sort of legal limbo. I think it's 2,500 people going through the court process. What do you do with them? Are they going to get a fair trial, or should they even be going through the legal process? So I think that is where there's sort of a grey area there, especially if this ruling has been heard.
A thought on how expensive, politically expensive as well, this is for the government. As you say, Shabana Mahmood can't recall from where Yvette Cooper was, but now having to go back through court and litigate this again, it just kind of sucks up air, doesn't it? And that's why I think they'll probably go through a court hearing at some point and just try and get this out of the way as soon as possible. And if there was another hearing and they lost it, I think they would just probably park it, maybe. But there's a lot of anger over this issue.
Let's move on, shall we, to the front page of The Times. And this is something that we're very focused on this morning because events are underway in Munich. We're likely to hear from the Prime Minister in our time on air in a couple of hours' time, as well as Marco Rubio. The Times is focusing on what Keir Starmer's message is likely to be in Munich. Talk us through it.
Yeah, there's lots of key themes that are going to be in Keir Starmer's speech this morning. One of the things that he's going to focus on is reform and the Green Party. Now, he's going to make it very subtle, because I'm not sure how that sort of plays out on a sort of big international stage where you have world leaders there. But one of the things that he's trying to say is that, the Green Party, reform between them, soft on Russia and weak on NATO. And he's trying to make the point that, the Labour Party under his government are going to be strong on such an issue. But I think one of the other things that he's trying to get across is that politicians, particularly this government, have to level with the public, because it's going to take a lot of money to actually get up to those high sort of defence spending. It's going to go up to about 2.5%, I think, next year, 3.5% of GDP in the middle of the next decade. And that money's got to come from somewhere, so you have to make choices. And I think he's just sort of trying maybe to lay that groundwork a little bit better than what he has done in the sort of first 18 months or so of his government. But on the political side, even though he's in Munich, there's this big stage at the back of his mind. He's attacking reform, he's attacking Greens, because he's got these by-elections coming up and he's got the local elections in May. So it's interesting that he's using the big international stage for a sort of political point on the domestic front.
Yeah, and Shona, what's your sense as to how much what the Prime Minister has to say for the Munich Security Conference will actually cut through and deal with some of those issues that Ryan's mentioned, and also this pitch one? We've kind of heard it for a little while, haven't we? John Healey's been talking about it, that we need to increase defence spending, and this is where it's going to be tight for everyone. We're all going to have to contribute, essentially. So is that story being told well enough in your telling of it?
I think it's interesting, as Ryan says, you know, this is a single by-election. It's one area that the people are going to vote. Are they looking at the global picture when they're deciding who they want as their local MP? And of course, we can't ignore, for Keir Starmer, all the noise around him. So obviously the instant answer from Reform is that this is a speech from a Prime Minister on the verge of being hounded out of office by his own party, and we have the Greens talking about cheap smears against their party. So they're always going to have a comeback to this. But Reform also says Reform believes our priority should be rebuilding our armed forces. They're always going to have a line that will sound to the man in the street like, oh, well, Reform do sound like they're tough on a global stage, without getting into that detail of what Keir Starmer is saying.
Well, yeah, and talking of some of the detail, he's also going to talk about teaming up more closely with Europe, isn't he, in terms of paying for military assets, but also in terms of coordinating on procurement so that the kit works, is complementary and works together. And focusing more on Europe than on the US in making those decisions. I mean, do you think that will play well in Europe, and how will that play back home to people who voted Brexit? Will they be uncomfortable about that?
Yeah, one of the key themes that Keir Starmer has been talking about over, in recent weeks is that those closer links, that closer integration with Europe. And I think one of the things that he's going to say in this speech is we can't have this over-dependence with America, so we have to shift our focus back to sort of European countries. So expect to hear a lot more of that from the government in the coming weeks. But again, I think he wants to make NATO sort of more European-led, because America, you just cannot rely on them to either maybe for the funding or security guarantees. So I think that is where Keir Starmer sees himself with, the likes of Germany and France.
And pitching it that savings could be made as well, is the idea, yeah.
All right, let's move on to this on the front of the Telegraph. Shona, you can take us through this reporting here, and it's about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor.
Yes, so the headline, Andrew leaked confidential Treasury briefing to banker friend, but the banker friend in this case is not Jeffrey Epstein. This is a different angle, a different story relating to these allegations that the former Prince Andrew was passing on information to his friends that they could gain from, but he had access to because, of course, he was a trade envoy for a decade. And so this is about his private secretary being sent some correspondence, a government memo about the Icelandic financial crisis. So this is going back to 2010. And then within the space of, I think it says, half an hour, this has been 2 hours, sorry, he passed the note on to Jonathan Rowland, his close friend and the former chief executive of, I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this, Bank Haveland, a bank that had bought assets from a failed Icelandic lender a year earlier. So quite complicated in terms of all the sort of chess moves of what was going on. But he sent this information on and said this information might be useful to his friend, quotes, before you make your move. I pass this on for comment and a suggestion or a solution. So as the Telegraph is saying, this raises fresh questions over the extent to which Mr Mountbatten Windsor may have been leaking sensitive information to his friends while he was in that role as trade envoy for a decade. So huge questions. And, obviously a lot of correspondence will have gone on in that decade that we don't have access to, but clearly a lot of this is being looked into in a lot of detail, both relating to the former Prince Andrew and Peter Mandelson.
One wonders whether some of those calls to have more detail about this time and Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's time as trade envoy will now come and get louder. Yeah,
no, definitely, and I think as the police will be looking into the charge of or the scoping exercise for misconduct in a public office, it's the sort of position that they were in responsible positions. So it'll be interesting to see where the threshold is for that investigation.
And obviously we don't have a response from Andrew about these particular allegations. In the past he's always denied any wrongdoing, but no doubt a response is being sought from him about these latest developments.
Absolutely. All right, let's stay with the front of the Telegraph, and we're going to talk about election... Ooh, are we... No, we're not. Sorry, we're moving on to student
Well, we
loans.
could do if you want to.
Should we stay with it? Because I've got it in front of me now.
Yeah, we're halfway
Sorry,
there.
Jeremy, Director, we're going to stay with the Daily Telegraph and we're going to talk about these election delays. So take us through this report, Shona.
Yeah, so the Telegraph has been campaigning on this as part of its campaign for democracy, and here we have the head of the Electoral Commission saying there are not sufficient reasons to delay local elections for millions of voters. And one of the reasons that has been put forward is financial. Councils saying running an election is unaffordable for them. But then you also have other cases where the head of the Electoral Commission is saying they should be allowed to be delayed when the council itself could be abolished in the next year, is on schedule to be as part of local government reorganisation. I think most people would think that does seem like a waste of time and money to have a council election if the council is not going to exist soon. But there's this other issue of delaying on financial grounds, and you think, well, that opens the door to a lot of denial of democracy potentially, because a lot of local authorities are under extreme financial pressure at the moment. But we obviously want to, all the more reason in a sense, for people to have their say about who's running the council.
And how damaging is this for the government? Because the opposition parties are leaping on this and saying, well, Labour's just scared of losing, and so they're cancelling elections, and it's a denial of people's right to vote.
It's not a great look, actually, when you've got, potentially sort of 3.5 million people who may not have a vote for 7 years. Labour ministers have been accused by Nigel Farage of sort of acting, as it says here, behaving like dictators. I think the idea of cancelling elections, there may well be good reasons for it. It's just not a great look.
Doesn't smell right, does it, to cancel elections?
Especially when you're not doing very well in the polls.
Yeah.
I don't know how long we've got left.
A couple of minutes, I think.
Oh, we've got a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
I just wonder whether we should talk about Matt Weston.
Oh, yes, of course.
He's on the front page of the Times. We're really messing with directly.
Sorry, Jeremy.
At all, but I just want to get this in because it's felt like a long week waiting for a medal, not for me really, but for Team GB. They've had a few near misses and a few disappointments, but Matt Weston really delivered.
Yeah, no, I watched it last night. It was absolutely fantastic, and he actually won by nearly a second.
He's getting
actually
faster and faster.
Yeah, I watched it. I thought he was doing really well, but surely, knowing Britain, something will go horribly wrong.
I think normally the margins are sort of hundredths of seconds, aren't they, in those competitions? So he was way out.
Flew along this course, and it's just his reaction at the end where he sort of knelt to the ground. He had one of his coaches or one of the teammates hugging him, and it was, he said that he'd missed weddings, he'd missed funerals, births, or what, just to actually train. So he has put himself through so much and missed a lot just to be in that position.
And so many athletes at that level, make so many sacrifices, don't they? But to not choke at that key moment with so much pressure.
Well, to actually improve as you're going down as well. Like, it's a remarkable achievement for him and really well done. And I suppose it just goes to show what that kind of dedication can do for an athlete.
Yeah, and where does he? I want to know where he trains, because there can't be too many places in Britain where you can actually do that.
I don't think it's local. I think he's training for it. Exactly.
Yeah, he'd get pretty wet in our weather recently, wouldn't he? Shona, have you been watching any of the Winter Olympics? Is it taking your imagination at all?
I haven't, to be honest. I've seen a few clips of people having horrible falls and bad injuries, which is a sign of social media algorithms, isn't it? That's what they think I want to see.
The crashes.
But you do have to enjoy, the extra element of this, the kind of... You have a lot of people who work hard and they don't end up with this glory, but to be told in your teens that you might, never walk again.
Yes.
And then to go on from that to winning gold at Olympic Games. I mean, you can't get more Hollywood happy ending than that.
No, it's all the more impressive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Great to have you both doing the papers, and we'll be back next hour.
See you in a bit. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?